What job should marketing get done in a company?
Marketing should get you in front of your ideal customers at all times. I always look at it from a brand perspective. Like, what is a brand, right? In my definition, in simple terms, it is what allows you to stay top of mind in front of your target audience so that they think of you whenever they need a particular service or product or something to be done. So I closely relate that to marketing. All marketing is essentially just staying top of mind so that when they need you, you're the first person they think of.
That's Ghalib Hassam. If you want to master founder-led marketing on LinkedIn, he's your guy. He's an engineer with a master's of science turned marketer / entrepreneur, which makes him have some of the most nuanced and distilled takes on content and founder-led marketing that I've yet to hear. He shares all of that and so much more in the rest of this episode, and I hope you enjoy. But before we get back to the conversation, run the intro. Welcome to On Marketing, a show where we uncover what marketing is. I won't tell you what to think. I'll help you improve how you think about marketing and life. I'm Jordan Ogren, a marketing strategist by day and a podcast host by night. This was recorded on May 16th, 2025. All opinions shared in this podcast are the individual views of the hosts and guests, not those of their employers or associate organizations. This content is intended for informational purposes and should not be considered professional marketing or life guidance. Listeners act on the information provided at their own risk. Thank you for being here. So then in your work, how do you execute that, or how do you actualize that staying top of mind, being on their short list for software or companies to hire? What kind of ways do you actualize in your own work that definition?
I'm a big fan of founder-led marketing, right? Because at the forefront of a company, if it's the founder who is talking, especially if it's a new company and not corporate, I think you could easily build a lot of trust with your audience, whether they are your target audience or not. But at the same time, I think it's a massive leverage, right? If people get to know you, your thought leadership, what your thoughts are, how you think, how you process things, if you put that out there through content, through networking, I think that automatically puts you at the top of a list if somebody wants somebody like you, right? And there are excellent examples these days on LinkedIn specifically, because I work on LinkedIn and I worked on LinkedIn for the past 3 years as well. People, they launch product, let's take SaaS as an example, right? People launch SaaS products, but before launching, before even developing an MVP, you could say the tool itself, they start researching. They start having conversations with people, their target audience on LinkedIn. They create content like, hey, we're doing this, we're doing that. They document their whole journey. And by the time launch comes, they've already built a wait list. They've already built trust with their audience. People already know what the tool is going to do. People already know the person behind the tool, which makes it so much easier to trust that person and trust that product. Because I think at the end of the day, Jordan, people buy from people, right? And I'm sure you agree with that as well. So if I like someone and I trust someone, I'm more prone to use, let's say, buying from them, as opposed to somebody who's completely new in the market. I don't know them. I don't know what they stand for, what their morals are, what their values are, what their product does. Maybe I do know that through a website. But if I don't know the person behind it, then I'll probably lean towards somebody who I actually trust.
That makes sense. So it wasn't coined this, but before it was probably logo-led growth. The company logo or the brand in and of itself, IBM, Apple, but even Apple, you could start to be like, is it Steve Jobs? I like your thought though around like starting the build or building your marketing before the product launches. How do you then wrestle with this so-called approach called stealth mode, or not letting anybody know about it till it's ready to launch? Have you thought much about the complete differences of your approach versus that kind of stealth startup approach? And is there any value in stealth mode?
Well, I'm not an expert on whether somebody should be in stealth mode or not, but I personally am not a big fan of it. Because I think if you're actually building something and you're probably going to be bootstrapped, let's say, you need to be speaking about it, you need to be shouting about it at the top of your lungs. Because right now, the day and age that we live in, I read a post earlier today that about whatever you build as a coder, let's say, you build a product or whatever and you use code to build it, somebody can replicate that about 80% of it like right away, because we have everything at our disposal. But what they cannot replicate is your brand. Let's say you've been building something for the past year, you've been talking about it for the past year, people know what you do, people know what your product is going to do, and then you build it and then you launch, you distribute it. You've already been distributing it one way or another through your founder brand. And then somebody else copies it, they build it, but they don't have that brand presence, they don't have that distribution. you're obviously at an advantage. So personally, not a big fan of stealth. I don't like working with people who are in stealth mode or who are like, yeah, I don't wanna talk about it, but I wanna build my brand. I want people to know what I do, but I can't really give you much. I don't think they go hand in hand. You have to choose. You can either talk about something or you can either not talk about something. I'm not a big fan of stealth mode.
That's both of us. I agree with you. I can't find many examples or many use cases where it makes sense or there's been kind of long-term benefit, rather than, to your point, as soon as possible to start talking and creating a conversation, because that is kind of what markets are, relationships and conversations. So the sooner you can start having conversations, which then lead to a level of relationships with whether target audience connectors in that industry that can help you and all that. So how do you... Maybe this is like a two-part question, but I kind of want you to take it where you want. So don't try to answer both parts of it. But like, what are the things that someone should start doing if they, founder-led or just, I want to maybe eventually be a founder. Like, what are those first things that you see them do that bring kind of a lot of success? And then maybe counter to that is, what are those either mistaken beliefs or things that people do that are just mistakes? You're like, don't do that first, do this.
First of all, I want to clarify. Let's say you want to build a founder brand on LinkedIn. If you already have a successful business outside of LinkedIn, you already have other marketing channels, because at the end of the day, LinkedIn is just another marketing channel. If you have other channels working for you and now you want to diversify and be like, hey, now I want to use founder-led marketing on LinkedIn as a channel as well, then that is fine. But if you jump on LinkedIn, build a profile, start creating content, etc., and your business is on fire and you expect LinkedIn to save it, it's not going to work out, because a good founder brand is not a substitute for a shitty PMF, you could say. If you don't have a product market fit, no matter how flashy your content is, it's not going to work out. So that's something I want to clarify now. Now, let's move forward. Let's say you have good PMF, or you're actually building it out at the moment and you want to test your PMF through LinkedIn. There are a couple of things that you need to avoid. First of all, you need to understand that if you create content sporadically, you talk about random things, but you're still consistent, you create 3 to 5 times a week and you're doing it for a year, but you're talking about random stuff, it's not going to work out. Like, it may sound harsh, but you're going to look back after a year and you're going to think that I just wasted the past 12 months. That is why I always say, and people argue with me about this, should we just post and then find our way, or should we have at least a simple sort of a strategy before we jump on LinkedIn? I always say you need a strategy first. You need to understand how you need to be positioned in the market. How are people currently perceiving you versus how do you want to be perceived in the market? So once you understand that, then obviously if you're building something or if you already have a successful business, you understand your customers' pain points, right? You should probably have strong thought leadership about the industry. You might have some takes. Maybe you're against the status quo, maybe you're for it. These things, they're going to shape your content strategy. I always say, in general, you're always going to be trying to create 3 types of content. Number 1 is pain point content. Do you understand your target audience's problems, and can you paint a picture that shows them that you understand it, plus you can solve it for them? So that's number 1. The second one is thought leadership. Do you have any takes about your industry? Do you know what's happening recently, and what do you think of it? Just tell us, right? One of my former clients, he summed it up very nicely. He said, it's not thought leadership if it's from a collective consciousness. So if you're trying to grab everything from everyone and talking about it, copy-pasting it, copying big creators, you're not going to stand out. So that's 2, right? Pain point, thought leadership. Lastly, which I'm a big fan of, is relatable content. You might have heard that, hey, we don't like creating personal content on LinkedIn because it's too personal. That's right. Personal does not mean that you need to be sharing your life's most intimate details. Personal, in simple terms, on LinkedIn means talking about something that makes you relatable to your audience. For example, you're building something, you're a new founder, or you're even talking about like, hey, I'm new to this whole founder branding thing, and I'm facing this problem, I'm facing that problem, I'm figuring it out. So by talking about stuff like that, which is still personal and is relatable, you position yourself as somebody that others can relate to, hence you build trust, right? People relate to you. People are like, you know what? Jordan is going through the same thing that I'm going through or I was going through. I want to talk to Jordan. As simple as that. So these are the 3 things that you need to be doing in terms of content, right? Pain point content, thought leadership, and then lastly, relatability. Now, what do you need to avoid, let's say? Number 1, as I said, do not just start posting if you don't have a strategy. Like, at least have some basic strategy, okay? That's number one. Number two, if you don't have patience and if you expect results in 3 months, don't even bother, because it's a long-term play. It's not like, a lot of the times what I've noticed with clients, they look at organic social on LinkedIn with a paid social lens. They think, oh, if we spend 1 month, we will get Y return. It's not like that. It takes time. Building trust takes time. So if your business is important to you and you want to get something out of LinkedIn, you have to give it time. I would suggest 6 to 12 months. So I'm not going to give you a very long answer, but in general, I think these are the two main problems that people face: lack of strategy and lack of patience.
I love that, because I do see that similar advice. Just start throwing spaghetti at the wall. And I do think, as like a scientific lens, if you don't have variables, hypotheses, which is kind of strategy, then it's like, how do we even know what works? There could be one viral post. And I think that is also a challenge. Is a lot of the viral posts, I saw someone say that like over 99% of people who liked it didn't follow them, or like, so it's like virality is really mainly just for yourself to feel doped up a bit. It's like feel good, but there's really no, so like if you don't have that strategy of what am I posting on, then you can't even say that didn't work, because like you didn't have a hypothesis. So I really enjoy that. Out of the 3 pieces of content you talked about, I have a hypothesis for which one might be like the hardest, or where most founders might need to like amp it up. What for you do you see out of those 3 being the weakest usually when you start with someone? And not even just because they aren't posting yet, but like the hardest to get out, or the hardest to kind of create out of those 3: thought leadership, pain point, and then relatable content. Which of those 3 do you find to be the hardest?
I would say pain point content, because let's talk about thought leadership and relatability, right? If you want to position yourself as somebody who's relatable, that means that it has to come out of your story. If you have a story, then it's easy to talk about that. We're not going to get into how comfortable or uncomfortable you're going to be talking about it, but it is relatively easy. All you have to do is try, right? Thought leadership, if you have some sort of thought leadership, or if you have strong opinions, you can talk about it, right? Because you have it. But the one thing that surprisingly I see people not really leveraging is pain point content. Because I want to give you an example. I was talking to Rob and Anthony on my podcast, right? We mentioned it earlier. And they told me, like, what we do is we just talk about the problems that our target audience is facing, and we just show them how to fix it. We don't even tell them, like, hey, we can fix it for you. We just show them, like, hey, you're facing this problem. This is how you can fix it, right? And where do those pain point content ideas come from, which people struggle with? Your sales calls, your discovery calls, your call transcripts with clients on a daily or a weekly basis. People, for some reason, don't go into that. It could either be because they don't have those resources, or they just feel like it's not worth it. That is what I've experienced so far. And thought leadership, relatability, I think you can definitely get something done with it. But if you have resources such as sales calls or discovery calls or calls in general, I think it's such a valuable resource. But still, I see people talking about pain points that are very generic, that lack context. They're like, hey, if you're facing this, you should do this. But they don't say like, hey, we just had a call with a potential client and they were facing XYZ problem and XYZ stage. This is exactly how you could fix it. So people don't give that extra context, and the difference, in my opinion, between a good post and an okay post is context. If you have more context, it ultimately makes it more relatable in terms of a pain point to your target audience as well.
I love that, because I think my first thought was relatable, as I've worked with a lot of people that are just afraid. But your point's valid that the relatableness is really all within us, like our story, like our stuff. So like we just need to dig deep, but the whole pain points is all out there. Like you have to go out there to get it, outside the boardroom, outside the marketing meeting. And that's so true, that's actually where a lot of us fail or struggle. And even to your point too, it's like we might grab very generic because we didn't ask like an extra why. So when we write about the pain point, it's like everyone identifies with it, so no one identifies with it, to your point of like context. So I really like that, because again, my hypothesis was incorrect, which is good why I had that. And now I can maybe update that a bit. So to finish up kind of this marketing portion of it, a lot has been changing with AI in the past few years, months, weeks. What have you changed your mind on, maybe in LinkedIn content marketing in totality, that you believed maybe a year, 2 years ago, or even 6 months ago Y, and today you're believing X, or maybe just slightly like Y.5? Does anything come to your mind for a shift in your mental models, your thoughts around marketing at large?
Yeah, of course. I mean, AI is a hot topic, and I think everyone has an opinion on it now. Some love it and some hate it, right? So I personally think AI is great. not to replace my creativity, but to replace all the manual labor that I had to do. I'm going to give you a very simple example. I've been working with personal branding agencies for the past 3 years. Today, I run my own business for the same niche, right? Same kind of a service. Back then, like 2022, when I started in marketing, it was like, hey, you get on a call with a client, you try to take manual notes, and then you try to remember after the call whether you missed something or not. You would probably not record the call. You wouldn't have a tool that records and summarizes and gives you a transcript. And then when you start writing content, it takes you at least 6 to 8 hours to write like a couple of weeks worth of batches, which is crazy now that I think of it. Now let's compare that to today. We have tools that records the call, that summarizes it for you, that gives you the transcript, and then I take that transcript and then I start working with LLMs, whether it's ChatGPT or something else, and then I don't tell it like, hey, this is a transcript, write me a post. I give it transcript because remember we talked about context earlier. So now that I'm writing content, I'm like, hey, this is all of the context that you need. Now let's start working together to write something. So we have a conversation, we write something together, then I ask a question, then I ask the AI like, hey, talk to me. What do you think could be better? What should I be doing? Do you need any more context? So it's, in my opinion, it has 10x my workflow, like so much faster, not because I'm sacrificing quality, but it has reduced all the manual labor. I don't have to do a lot of manual stuff that I used to do before. So in my opinion, AI is great, but I think there are some lines that you shouldn't be crossing. For example, I am not a fan of AI UGC content. Everybody's like, hey, we have just developed an agent that creates AI UGC. All you have to do is put a product in its hands. And I'm like, the whole point of UGC is user generated content. It's you should be like FUGC, like fake user generated content. That's more appropriate term for it. But it just doesn't make sense to me. And people are like, hey, we've done this. Let me give you a giveaway on LinkedIn where you could do this too. But yeah, stuff like that, I'm not a big fan. At best, AI should not replace your creativity. All it has to do is replace your manual labor. That's what I think about it.
I am a big call transcript person using that with AI, and even like just getting ideas for content from the call. So even on like a minimal basic level, I've been thinking a lot about AI, especially because in writing, there's this huge thing of like, was it AI written? Is there an M dash or all these things? And for me, I think about like farming or building buildings in the fact that somebody gets into a machine in that moment they are essentially a cyborg because they couldn't pick up that much dirt with their hands, but they're one with the machine to pick it up, move it. And I don't think anybody says this house or this thing is less valuable because you use machines to do it than you use your bare hands to like dig it out. And how I then think about that is there's some people with AI, because I know if I got in that tractor, if I got in that bulldozer, it would be like two people because I'd be like, oh, it moved this way because I'm just so not used to it. But I think the best marketers today and the marketers of the future will be one with the machine that like literally if they want to pick something up, they just know the way to move it. And I think that's at least my advocacy of like why you should just jump into it, do it. But again, to your points, there's also like negative ways, literally copy and pasting posts from it. And I've seen some people where like they'll forget the first bit. So it's like, here's a good post. And then it'll like be in the post. I'm like, dude.
They forget to like remove it. Yeah. They're like, oh, here's your post. Yeah.
The lowest barrier. But I love your thoughts on that. And kind of I've been hearing a lot of people with a similar sentiment or just not changing, but just realizing more and more that it's a great assistant and it's not like taking away some of it, but you have to balance like, is it doing the thinking or are you assisting your thinking with
and
it?
Something, I want to mention something. It's, if you look at it from a different perspective, let's say I am running a business today, I help clients build their founder brands on LinkedIn, right? When I look at my workflow, sometimes I think if it weren't for AI, I would have to hire. I would have to pay an extra salary. I would have to invest in other people, not because I don't want to, but I would have to, right? If I'm scaling my business. Right now, AI is almost like an extra employee, but it only costs $20 a month. So when I'm on calls with somebody, with a potential client, or I'm on a client content call, it's like I have an extra person sitting on that call, taking notes, understanding everything. And once the call is done, I start having a conversation with that person. I'm like, hey, you were there on the call. Let's do it. Let's talk about it. So I wanted to mention that because there are so many ways that you could leverage it. For me, it has been amazing. I absolutely love it. And it has really helped me run my business. And I'm just excited in how it can be more utilized in the future.
I love that. It's like a $20 a month intern, but with really high levels.
Sounds terrible when you think about it, like $20 intern, but it's a reality right now.
But the crazy thing though is that it's better than an intern, because to your point, it's able to hold so much context that it can have that convo, where I think, no offense to interns, and I've been one, so it's not, but like they don't have that ability. They're green. So if you're like asking them, but the AI LLMs, they're so large, like it can kind of have a very generic or an approach that helps you. So it's like you get both this intern doing those manual tasks, summarize, and then you also get this like thought partner, a strategy partner, because they're able to go back and forth if you're good with talking with it, because sometimes they'll just tell you what you want to hear. Well, that's some great conversation around marketing AI. I could definitely talk to you for a while, but now the more important stuff, life. Are you ready to jump into this?
Let's do it.
All right. What is your purpose? Because I know everybody has a different purpose for life. What do you think the purpose of life is, or what is your aim in life?
I'll talk about this from two perspectives, right? First of all, from a more general perspective, I think every moment you don't spend with family is a waste. For me, that is the purpose of life. I'm going to give you an example. I spent 4 to 5 years in Istanbul pursuing my master's degree in engineering, and now I'm doing marketing. By the way, I changed careers. And when I think about it, it was great and all, but every moment I wish that I was with my family. Because in 2016, my dad passed away, and he wasn't with us like at our home. He was an engineer as well, so he was in another country working there. So when he passed away, I realized I could have spent so much time with him, but I just couldn't. He was away, I was away. Sometimes, I don't know, things didn't work out, right? He was away. Now, in my opinion, for me, life is I need to spend time with my family, and I need to design a life that allows me to do so, right? So that's my first perspective. Now, let's talk about a different perspective, which ties into why I started my own solo business and I quit my last job. In 2022, I started as an intern at an agency based in Berlin, but I was working remote this whole time. The reason I decided to build a remote life is because, I told you my father had passed away in 2016. I was coming back from Istanbul, home, Pakistan, and I wanted to spend time with my mother. I didn't want to leave her again. So I had a choice. I could either go to another country to work again because the job situation is really bad here, or I could try to design a remote first life that would allow me to stay at home and build a career. Not become a freelancer. I wanted to build a career, right? There's nothing wrong with freelancing, but I think I prefer the other option. So I landed my first internship at a Berlin agency, same niche, by the way, LinkedIn service. Then I landed another internship at a London agency, same niche, same stuff on LinkedIn. Then the agency at London, they offered me a full-time role. I accepted, and I spent 2 years with them. I got promoted, and then 2 years later, I was like, I need a new opportunity. So I landed another role at a Dubai agency, still remote, still at home, building my own home, work from home office, as you can see right now. But 2 months in, I realized that I needed to do something else because I wanted to design a life that would allow me to be financially free, number one. Second, that would allow me to be free in terms of time. Why? So that I can spend time with my family. It all ties together. So I did, luckily, a year ago, like actually in May last year, I decided to go solo. It's been a year now, this May, and it's been crazy. It's not been difficult. For the first 5 months, I had 0 clients, and then after 5 months, I had 5 suddenly. And now it's fluctuating, right? Up and down, up and down. But I realized that in business, it's not like once you hit a certain number of money every month, it's going to stay there. It's fluctuating, up and down. The point is surviving. I think till the end, you just have to survive in business. That is my perspective now. But luckily and happily for me, fortunately, and I'm very thankful to God for this, I have a stable enough income so that I can support my family. I have a wife. I have a 14-month-old daughter. So I'm a new dad, you could say. And now I can provide for them in the way I wanted. Now I can spend time with my family as well. So that is the second perspective. Now I want to design a life which ties into the first angle that allows me to be financially free and at the same time allows me to be time free so that I can spend time with my family.
So I'm pulling a few themes. Freedom, because then that freedom, whether that be time, cash, autonomy of working freedom, allows you to be there with family. What does your time with family give you? Why does time with family matter so much? And I get you shared with your family, so you felt maybe a gap. You felt that hole of like, why weren't we together? But why is that such a strong, what's the outcomes that you gain through family time or spending time with your family?
I think about this a lot. I often talk to my wife about this. I'm like, what is the purpose of life, right? And I because it's such a cliche question, but it hits me at times because I'm like, okay, I'm working, I'm doing this, I'm doing that, but why am I doing all of this? But then I realized towards the end, and I think it answers your question, I've narrowed it down to spending time with family because one day we're all gonna go anyway, right? And I could work my ass off and I could be great at what I do and I could only work, get a lot of money, this and that. But I know that I always regret not spending time with family. So I think there's not a definite answer to this, but I've chosen this as my purpose of life. I want to spend time with my family because at the end of the day, that's all that matters. They're the ones who came with me and they're the ones who are going to go with me. Nobody else. So that for me is why it matters so much because it gives me peace. When I'm sitting with my wife or my daughter or my mother, I'm like, I'm stressed, right? I'm like, work this, work that. What am I going to do next month, this month? Savings, apartment, this or that. What am I going to do? But then I'm like, hey, I'm just sitting with family, and that's all that matters. And nobody has seen tomorrow anyway. I don't even know if I'm going to be here tomorrow. So that gives me a great amount of peace. And I think the fact that it gives me peace is because I think deep down inside me, that is what I have chosen as a purpose of life. And I'm happy with it.
And when you live in alignment with that, there's peace. There's
There
a
is
feeling
peace.
of
There
I'm
is
doing
peace.
the right thing. I'm on the right path.
Yeah.
So how do you balance then maybe this not inward in the sense of yourself, but inward in the sense of family? But then there's this other side of this of like outward, right? Social justice, helping others that aren't family. Because a parable that I routinely go to is from the Bible when Jesus is with a group of people and someone says, hey, your mother or brother, they're outside. And he looks around him and he says, these are my mothers and my brother, like these are my family. So I've always had this challenge because for someone who's had an amazing family life, and I think that's always the challenge is we bring with us context, we bring with us baggage. And I had a great family, which then has helped me, I think, see the dark or the hidden hindrances that family can have. So then, because if I'm driving down the street and I see a family member walking, I'm going to pull over. I'm going to say, get in. Do you need anything? You need some water? You need some food? But why, when I drive by that same person who's not a family member, quite frankly, I don't give a shit about them. I just drive right by them. And for me, though, it's true if they're different than my family. But if you really, in my opinion, regardless of religion, if you go down to the core, we're all one. Like if I hurt you, I hurt myself. And that could be its own Buddhist or its own kind of philosophy. But how do you then balance this family, but also like, aren't we put here to help our neighbor,
Yeah.
our person who has no family connection to us? How do you balance that?
Yeah, definitely. And I'm completely aligned with that because I think, in my opinion, we have a moral responsibility. If we have been fortunate enough to have means, which could be financial or any other sort, that could help others, I think we have a responsibility. We have to help people, whether it's our neighbor or somebody on the street or anything. If you see somebody who's in distress, they may not be your family member, but if you understand that they're in trouble and you can help them because you have been fortunate enough to have enough means, you definitely should. Sometimes that is financial, sometimes that is not financial. That is completely fine. But then there are some people who are not comfortable asking for help. But if you see somebody and if you have enough sense of, I don't know how to say it, if you are emotional enough to have that empathy that you can understand other people, I think 100% you have a moral responsibility to help them. And your question on how do you balance between family and non-family, family is family, right? They come first, they're with you and everything, but it's my opinion, if there are two people, one's family, one's not family, but you know that this other non-family member is in more distress and they're more deserving, you should go for that one. Because if they're your family and they're not your family, but at the end of the day, you know in your conscious that they were the ones who actually needed my help, not my family member in that very moment, they should be the ones receiving the help. That is my opinion. Some people might agree with it, some people not, but you need to be just, you need to be fair to everybody, whether it's family or not. If somebody needs help, they need help, whether they're family or not.
Yeah, kind of a both and. I don't think they contradict each other.
Yeah.
But I know that there's the other side of it, and this happens a lot with pastors who go out and they save and help tons of people, but then their 6, 7 children have no connection with their father. And then you start to have this thought is, do the ends justify the means? And I don't know, I'm just, again, coming from probably a very privileged place that I'm able to have a great family to realize there's more than just kind of living within my home. Like, there's kind of going out there, and as I have a little younger daughter, 5-6 months, and it just makes me realize of like, why can't I have the same love that I have towards her, towards every person, and kind of the outflowing that then she would see that like, oh, my dad doesn't just give me love, he's very kind and nice to these other people. And it almost like does more for her than if I just only showered her. If I only, to your point of like, if I know someone else is in need, but I just neglect them because it's like my daughter, it's all I need. Because then that brings me to kind of a caste system, or this kind of like, if you're family, you're good, and if you're not family, like you're not, like I don't care to help you at all, which is kind of, in my opinion, the old world, where it was very much so that way of like you're born into things, and family was literally like, that was so important, and the Bible talks about genealogy so much. But Jesus like painted a slightly different picture for me of like, man, he like went out and like almost like not neglected his family, but he like just like made a conscious decision to say, you are all my family. And that maybe is this core here of like, if you don't have that decision, or you don't believe we're all one, if you think other people are their own beings and you have no connection with their indwelling spirit, then yeah, you probably won't help them at all. And because your family has your DNA, you feel like they should be the first. But I land on this place that we all have kind of at least a thread of the same DNA, this indwelling. So, but I love your ability both, and I think that's important.
I learned something from my father, right? My father was the kind of person who had a massive heart. He would help anybody and everybody, right? And sometimes that would backfire because, people would use him somehow, and you'd know that maybe they didn't actually need help. But I think people who are empathetic enough and who have such big hearts are truly lucky, because I envy those people. If you can actually love somebody like you love your family and like your daughter, let's say, I think you're extremely lucky, because people who have such massive hearts and who are so, they're okay with just everybody, and they're like, you know what, it's okay. They're humans as well. I'm a human too. Nobody's perfect, right? And they have that love for other people, and they're not like, hey, just because this is my daughter, I'm not going to be just to this other kid. I think they're truly lucky people. And for somebody to have that level of sense of emotions and everything, I think they're truly lucky, and I truly envy them. And I can only strive to be like that.
I love that. All right, final question, because I think I could go forever on life with you as well. This is fun. There's a movie, I'm not sure if you have watched it. It's called Inception. It has Leonardo DiCaprio in it. Yeah. So to the 2 to 3 people listening, if you haven't listened, here's a quick synopsis. These people go into dreams to incept an idea, usually a malicious idea, sell your company, trade this partner, whatever, so then they could kind of achieve whatever they're trying. But I want to pit the question to you, but more in a benevolent way. If you could go in the minds of everybody on this planet tonight while they're sleeping and incept an idea, so then tomorrow morning, we all wake up with the idea you incepted, thinking it's our own idea, and we live out of that idea. What idea are you incepting in the minds of every human?
Well, interesting question. It would definitely have to be, because I don't like the current state of the world, right? A lot of people are suffering. A lot of people are suffering, and it's not fair. Whatever it is, it's not fair. What I would do is, I'm not going to be like, oh, solve every problem in the world. No. I'm just going to incept this idea into people's mind that when you wake up, you have this sense of responsibility that I have to take care of my neighbor. I need to make sure that they're okay if I'm okay. I think that is going to solve a lot, because if I'm taking care of my neighbor and my neighbor is taking care of their neighbors, and it is all over the world, I think the world would be a much better place. Unfortunately, it's not at the moment. It's unjust. It's not fair. But in an ideal world, if people could actually take care of other people like they take care of their own family, I think we'd be much better off.
I think that's a beautiful bow on our conversation, Ghalib. That was really well put. So thank you so much for your knowledge and your time today. Thank you.
Of course. Thank you so much, Jordan, for having me. Hope you got what you wanted out of this episode. And yeah, man, it was nice chatting with you.
And this is the end of the podcast. What one idea or topic of conversation stood out to you today? Write it down, share it with a friend, post it on social. The main thing is take action. That's how we go from theory to mastery, we need to practice. We need to put it into practice. Thank you for listening and being here, and I hope you tune in next week.